ThreatLocker implements a least privileged approach to cybersecurity, blocking every executable unless specifically authorized by your team. This methodology mitigates ransomware, supply chain attacks, and zero-day exploits. It ensures 24/7, 365 protection for your organization. To learn more about how ThreatLocker can help prevent known and unknown threats in your digital environment, safeguard your data and operations from threat actors, and align your organization with compliance frameworks, visit securityweekly.com/threatlocker. Do your end users always, and I mean always, without exception, work on company-owned devices and IT-approved apps? I didn't think so. So my next question is, how do you keep your company's data safe when it's sitting on all those unmanaged apps and devices? 1Password has an answer to this question: Extended Access Management. 1Password Extended Access Management helps you secure every sign-in for every app on every device because it solves the problems traditional IAM and MDM can't touch. Check it out at securityweekly.com/1password. In 2024, the future of identity, security, and digital transformation converges at Octane, hosted by Okta. On October 15th through 17th, join the brightest minds in tech and business in Las Vegas or online as they explore groundbreaking innovations and unveil the latest Okta solutions to keep your organization secure, connected, and ahead of the curve. Whether you're a developer, an IT or security leader, or visionary, Octane is your gateway to transforming tomorrow, today. Security Weekly listeners need only pay $100 for a full conference pass to Octane, and you can do so by using the discount code OKTNSC24 at securityweekly.com/Octane2024. Stream the event live on okta.com/Octane. Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. Now we're going to do the Enterprise Security Weekly news, and we have Mr. Tyler Shields with us. How you doing, Tyler?
Good, Adrian. How are you today, my friend? Happy recording on a Wednesday this week. Happy Wednesday.
Do you want to know what the day was in the intro?
I do. I love knowing what the day is. It's one of my favorite things we do on this show.
It was National Moldy Cheese Day.
Huh. I can go either way with that
Yeah,
one because
right?
I do like some good cheese with a little bit of stank to it, but I don't know about moldy. Moldy just seems a little much.
Yeah, I mean, don't describe it as moldy. Like, we know mold is used in the process of making cheese, but calling it out like that doesn't make it appetizing at all.
Yeah, it's like saying stinky, moldy, gross stuff. Do you want a bite? Yeah, sure, because that's what it's made from.
You want some foot cheese?
My favorite.
All right, you can check out, if you're listening, securityweekly.com/ESW379 if you want to follow along and click any of the links from any of the stories that we're talking about today. Today is Tyler's last show. We're sad to see him go, but it's been a good run. I think you've been around since the late. I think we were in the 190s in terms of episode numbers when you started doing the show.
That many episodes?
That many.
My God. It doesn't feel that way at all.
Yeah. So you've been here for almost 200 episodes.
Yeah, I would have never guessed that. If you had me put an over-under, it would have never been in the hundreds. Nope, no way. But it's been a wonderful handful of years, Adrian. I've enjoyed the ride sitting alongside you, being your number two. I appreciate you letting me be on the show.
It has been delightful. It's been my pleasure. All right, let's talk about some funding. We got a few weird ones today, Tyler. Eon is the first one here. Came out of stealth with seed, Series A, and a Series B. 127 million right out of the gate. And maybe it's not fair for me to compare it to StackPath, but that's the only other time I've seen this happen, that I've seen a company come out of stealth with several rounds of funding, and StackPath didn't end well. So, this could be a totally different scenario, but it is not a typical one.
Yeah. So this one's interesting. I actually heard about this one a few weeks ago, maybe a couple, 2-3 weeks ago, rumoring that it was going to be coming out of stealth. And the interesting thing about it is it's Sequoia backed. And if it's the one I'm thinking of, because maybe I'm confusing it, the news article was Yes, it's a cloud backup one, but the news article was saying that they're the next Wiz, and they've already got significant revenue, like significant revenue before coming out of stealth. That they've actually landed tons of clients. They're already growing like crazy. Thus, the significant backing. Um, who knows how true that is, right? You never know. But it's there. The article drew some interesting parallels in the sense that this is the team behind Cloud Endure, which was acquired by Amazon in 2019. The team at Wiz was the team behind Adalom that was acquired by Microsoft a couple years prior to Wiz being founded. And so
Right.
there was a lot of parallels that could be drawn. And I think that could be one of the reasons why you're seeing such massive investment on this one. But yeah, it's super scary. Shouldn't end well by all accounts. But who knows? Maybe it's the next Wiz. You never know with these things.
Yeah, it's this is an area that I don't know a whole lot about. I mean, backups are clearly important. We've seen, I think, several cases where organizations thought they had multiple levels of backups and they all fail. They're not able to restore them. I think the GitLab incident from maybe 10 years ago now, was one where somebody was in production and they thought they were in dev and they deleted a bunch of customer data and
Oops.
they live streamed the whole thing, and like 14 hours later they 5 levels of backups all failed, and they're running on top of Microsoft Azure. But the other thing that where I would need to be more educated on this market, I would love to see the elevator pitch on this. Is yeah, they sold a backup solution to AWS. Like all the clouds have backup built in. So what is the rationale for building, especially talking about building something as big as Wiz? Is it that you don't trust anyone, or like you want it to be a separate organization running your backups? You don't want all your eggs in one basket. I'd love to hear the rationale of buying a product like this.
Yeah. So the previous company that they sold to Amazon was a disaster recovery and cloud migration service,
Oh, okay.
um,
So not
which is
backup necessarily.
it's subtly different, but backup is a piece of that, right? Because to migrate clouds or to do
Right.
DR, you have to have
You
some
need your
kind
data.
of correct. Um, what I want to know is cloud backup posture management, CBPM, yet another
Of
star
course.
SPM, right?
Another
So that
PM.
made me chuckle. But that being said, I'm going to guess it's a shot in the dark here because I know very little about this company other than what's in the press release. But I'm going to guess that it's more about the resiliency of the backup than it is the act of the backup, right? So the
Mm.
clicking and the creating of a backup is one activity, but
Make it stupid
is the
proof, right?
is the backup accessible? Is the backup, corrupted? Is it, they use the word in here too about turning your backups into assets that can be properly managed in a better way. And to do that across cloud platform, multi-platform cloud versions is no easy task as well. So I think there's a certain level of overarching solution here that is somewhat unique. Is it 127 million in funding coming out of stealth unique? No, I doubt it. I don't think
Yeah.
of any company probably is,
Since
but
January,
um,
all three of those rounds raised since January this year.
well, like I said, look, the market is expected to reach 838 billion by 2034, right? So,
Mhm.
directionally accurate data, who cares what the real number is, but massive market. And everybody needs it. Like, is this one of those stupid, simple things that should have been solved a long time ago that nobody actually did,
Yeah.
that can be done just by simply calling a bunch of APIs and creating some kind of linkages like Wiz did, and then they just blitz scale and run over a market? It might be. And
Yeah.
again, the rumor mill has it that they have significant revenue even before coming out of stealth, which is why they've gotten so much money.
Wow. Yeah, there's a few bits here I want to read from the press release that make it sound interesting. Eon autonomously scans maps and classifies cloud resources continuously, providing backup recommendations based on business and compliance needs. So, that's kind of hand holding this stupid proof it, something that's that critical. Data resilience and backup. I mean, for your whole company to be resilient, this is an important piece. Um, and then they say they also it's fully managed, So this is in the cloud. You're not setting up any SANs to do any of this stuff. Portable and provides global search capabilities, which sounds really interesting. Being able to search through massive amounts of data that you've backed up. Um, yeah, yeah, that does sound tempting, and you have one
Yep.
solution. Most companies of a certain size these days are probably multi-cloud, whether they want to be or not. That maybe
Mm-hmm.
because of some product they use, or the identity piece is one place, but the applications are another place. Having a backup solution that covers all that stuff. I can see the attraction there.
Yeah, more than just the backup of the data, but everything that goes around it is the important differentiation.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that goes. Yeah, hopefully, that is an industry where we regularly see, um, bad stuff happen. People can't restore their backups, or they take too long to restore. So, yeah, that's an area where we need good solutions. So, yeah, hopefully they do well. All right. Let's see. Everything else here is significantly smaller. We still have a lot of AI. We've got Resolve AI, which came out with a $35 million seed round led by Greylock. So, yeah,
I
very
wish I
interesting.
could say I wish I could say, oh, that's a small round compared to the previous one, but it's still a massive seed round, absolutely
It
enormous.
is.
About I want to say 4.5x what a typical seed round has been in the most recent data reports I've read. So I don't
Yeah,
know
anything
why
double digits, a
people
big seed
continue to
round.
do this. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know why people continue to take such massive amounts of money so early. I mean, I read a great article that at the end of the day, that should not be a badge of honor, right? And we often play into that
Mhm.
as a podcast, right? We talk about how much money people are raising, but it's not really a badge of honor because all you're really doing is selling a piece of your company. That's all you're doing.
Mhm.
So, anyways, as far as Resolve goes, I don't know much about what they're doing, but
Yeah, it got into the mix because a lot of this stuff that I cover in funding comes from the um, security funded newsletter from
mhm.
Return on Security. But yeah, I don't think they're really a security vendor. Basically, what they're kind of like the DevOps equivalent of some of these SecOps AI automation, like virtual SOC analyst, except this is a virtual AI production engineer, which
Hmm.
autonomously troubleshoots and resolves production issues and handles operational tasks, which kind of takes us. I mean, this is a common topic in security. Like, are you comfortable having a product that's can make changes in production and make those kinds of decisions on its own without a human in the loop? I don't think most companies are there where they trust something like this to do it. But I mean, $35 million in seed, that they'll find out whether or not there's market fit there. And it may be that there's enough of the market willing to do it, that they can be successful here. But really interested to see if we ever hit that line where we start letting things autonomously do production stuff.
It's coming. It's not if, it's when, right? It may not be a month, it
You
may not
think?
be a year, it may not even be 3 years or 5 years, but it will happen, right? The world will switch to agent-based agentic AI where you tell your AI to do something and it spawns its own agents to take smaller chunks of the task and chop it down and execute, whether it's over
Mm.
APIs or over other system to system or agent to agent style calls. That's coming. I don't think anybody can really fight that discussion. It's just a matter of when. And are you bringing your company out too early so that it doesn't actually work for you? It's a timing thing, I think, for many of these companies more than anything else.
Yeah, and there's an interesting quote here that I want to read. So the founder apparently worked at Splunk, and he said, "When I led Splunk's observability business, 90% of the SRE team, which is site reliability engineering, resigned within 6 months due to burnout from on-call duties." Most customer escalations were due to reliability issues, and at times production was frozen for months to avoid outages, halting innovation. So that's pretty compelling. So two things here. It kind of confirms my idea that this might be, at least initially, kind of a niche product, where companies, clearly in this case, not making that fully autonomous had some heavy downsides, and also, yeah, I mean that makes a compelling case for it. I think
Yeah,
if I had a
time will
second
tell on
point, I
this one.
forgot it.
Time will tell on this one.
Yeah. So yeah, very interesting all the same. Let's see. We've got Harmonic Security, or Harmonic AI, I think it is. They are in my
Of
list of
course.
AI companies, but I have forgotten what they do. I'm starting to get them all mixed up in my head.
It really doesn't matter
Um,
what they do, Adrian, because on their page, they have a picture of the band. Literally, it looks like the founders and early people of the company are a band, which is cool as hell. I mean, they get kudos and bonus points for, quote, getting the band back together to form Harmonic.
do they? Okay, didn't see that picture. I must have missed that.
Yeah, it's right on their main page. Harmonic's journey, fueling Harmonic's journey with a new Series A funding. They took in 17.5 million in Series A funding, bringing up their total 26 million funding in less than a year.
Oh, I
And
see it
yeah, he
now.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he dives right in to outline why he believes that the company has a really good chance at growing. And it looks like it's primarily focused on data privacy or some
Yeah.
kind of data analysis, data tagging, data privacy automation.
So yeah, I've noticed. I've gone through. I have a pretty well curated list of AI security companies at this point, and that's become a whole category where they're more AI adjacent. Because AI is one of the biggest concerns is data hygiene and data governance. There's a whole category of businesses just focused on helping you clean all that up so that you can then feed it as a RAG or whatever is training data
Yep.
to AI.
Yep. I just like the puns all about music, striking the right chords, getting the band back together, right team, right tempo. I mean, come on. It gets tons of bonus points in my eyes.
Yeah. All right. Not really any more that I want to talk about there under funding. There's, except number 6 was kind of interesting. Department of Homeland Security um, funded, they call it contracts, but it sounds like funding. And it's focused on something we haven't talked about in a while, which is privacy engineering. This idea of creating synthetic data that you can use in a dev environment instead of using customer data with actual PII and sensitive stuff in your development environments. And they list 4 companies here, which each got about $200,000, which is not a huge amount. But Better Data, Data SIBO, mostly AI, all caps, and Rockfish Data.
I love that name. We're mostly AI. We're not completely AI. We're just mostly AI.
2 in the US, mostly AI is in Austria, and Better Data is based in Singapore. So very interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't even
I
realize
wonder
there
if
were
these are
4 companies doing
grants.
this.
Yeah, I wonder if these are grants or if they're more investments. I don't know yet, but
They sound like grants,
there's yeah, yeah.
like
A
no
couple hundred
strings
thousand is
attached.
not
Here's
that
the
much.
money.
Yeah, it's not that much to go on, right? They're just what do they say? They're fostering innovation is what they're doing.
Yeah, yeah. Which I presume those kinds of things are no strings attached. Like there's no equity in there or anything like that. It's just money to go do something
Yeah, tough to know, but probably.
at that amount. Yeah. Dragos acquired Network Perception, delivers the industry's most comprehensive visibility of OT environments. So, yeah, Dragos doing pretty good there. I don't think that's their first acquisition either. I think they've made a couple at this point. Then the
They've
other
been around
acquisition is
forever.
Prep. Yeah. Yeah, how long have they been around? I don't have any
I'll
concept of
look.
that at this point.
I'll look it up while you talk about the other acquisition.
Yeah, the other acquisition, Prevalent acquired by Miratech, new era for TPRM, third party risk management. So, yeah, Prevalent's been around for a while. I'm not familiar with Miratech, probably because they are a 35-year global leader in legal risk management and HR solutions. So,
Hmm.
and something else that didn't make the news is I think Discover acquired a fraud company. So more and more, we're seeing security adjacent tech startups being acquired by companies outside of security or even tech in some cases,
Yeah, those are
which
interesting
is
acquisitions.
just more evidence that security's kind of become a mainstream market at this point.
So Dragos was founded, looks like according to Crunchbase, anyways, April of 2016, which would make it an 8-year-old company with total funding raised to date of 438 million.
Wow.
That's a lot of funding. I hope they're through Series E, and I hope that their revenue supports that funding amount.
Yeah, it's a big chunk of change for probably maybe the biggest OT company out there, privately held OT security
Yeah,
company.
yeah, they're on the Crunchbase unicorn list, so presumably they're $1 billion valuation. And having taken in 500 million, you would hope it's $1 billion or more valuation. But um, yeah, OT has always just been that one thing that always kind of boggles my mind. It always seems like there's always a massive need for it, and then you just never see it picking up. But maybe it's been a steady, slow, consistent compounding growth for 8 to 10 years, right? And they finally got to where they're of a sufficient size, just in a nice, healthy way over a decade.
Well, the interesting thing I think is we've seen more and more OT traditional OT industries disrupted by companies that are tech companies at their core, that are software companies. So all the electric car companies, for example, are kind of software first uh, instead of the reverse here. And those, I think those kinds of companies coming into more manufacturing things where you have OT environments, I would think would make this create a bigger market for this kind of security.
Yeah, I mean, it's always made sense. It's just I never hit the exponential growth that I expected it to hit.
Yeah. The next one here, we've got a report, and this is from one of my favorite sites, the DFIR report. I get it as a newsletter, is how it comes into me. But this is something that I don't want to talk about the details necessarily here. I mostly include the DFIR report just because I think it's so important, the work that they're doing, and so often gets overlooked. I think I think most security failures can be at least partially addressed by making sure that you can that you're addressing actual threats that exist. And each of these, every time they come out with an analysis of some kind of threat campaign or threat actors mo, you've got all these details that you can go through, the scenario that you can recreate in your environment and see how well you would do against this threat. And I think they actually monetize it somewhat also, where you can get actual Sigma rules and IOCs and stuff like that from them. So I think but most of it's freely available. You can go through the whole report. You can see how initial access happen, then how they pivot after that, the different tools they use, how they leverage them. Uh, you know, Great for detection engineers, for IR teams, for SOCs to go through these reports and make sure you don't have any major gaps.
Yeah, it is a very important thing that they do, and I know some folks that operate in the day-to-day operational side of this kind of work, right? The creation of this kind of research. And the thing that's kind of sad is that the bulk of this level of depth of analysis and research that occurs is all done behind the scenes and handed from one group to another group, right? Like from Facebook's group to LinkedIn's group over to Netflix's group, and all these like super high tech, amazing researchers that their full time job is this kind of analysis. They pass it amongst their own circles, right? And maybe it hits a banking circle or two, an ISAC, a banking circle, but it never gets to the mass adoption level. That's what always blows my mind with this stuff is like all this stuff gets handed amongst the mega smart, but the mass market never gets it, never sees it, never reaps the rewards from it, right? And I think the assumption there is that the research makes it into your CrowdStrike tool or your whatever your mass market endpoint or your mass market protection tool is, but that's the assumption. Whether it's right or not is the question, right? How much of that actually makes it in? And I know some folks that run in this space very closely at a personal level, and the stories they tell me are just shocking all the time. And I often wonder how it makes it down, how it trickles down, or if it even trickles down to the rest of the world.
Well, yeah, and there's IOCs in there; those probably trickle down through your tool. But then there's also lessons here that are more like design level, more missing processes that you might have. Automated playbooks that you can lean on. There's a lot of lessons in here that aren't just something that you can program into a tool or you can uh, implement as a Sigma rule or YAR or something like that. So I think it's really worth reading through this stuff. And yeah, the first interview I had today was Ben Siegel from Cybernest, and it was one of the points of why he built the Cybernest is not enough information sharing within cybersecurity, so or knowledge sharing. So this falls right in line with that.
Yep, I agree completely.
I love number 5. Number 5 is a kind of ranty, completely justified. This just reminds me of so many of the product reviews I've wanted to write in the past. But it's this is an old post. It's from almost exactly a year ago. But it's just somebody's frustration coming into an organization already using AWS Security Hub, trying to use it and just having that clarity, being a new employee coming in from the outside and just looking at everything coming out of a security tool and saying this is all just worthless. I don't know why any of this is here. There's no sense spending any time on it. And I just love that clarity that comes through in this post. And there's some humor in there as well, which always helps when writing this kind of thing. But I think there's a ton of lessons in here, both for buyers, practitioners using tools, deploying them, remembering to ask, like, where's the value here? Is there any value in what I'm doing? I've seen entire teams that come to work, log into tools, click stuff, log out and go home. And like there's no point in anything they did that day. Nothing they did moved the needle at all. But then there's also a lesson for the vendor side here where I can't tell you how many like the most part with Sims, I've experienced this where everything out of the box was completely useless and I had to customize everything from the ground up to get anything useful. But maybe just some product folks that are very out of touch with their customers to get to this point.
It's all of the above. Yeah, it's all of the above. My favorite line, and I highlighted it. Where'd it go? When he brings up the dashboard and he says the security score is a 31, the foundation is a 33. WTF? I've passed 69 and failed 137 things. 137 is not that much to fix, right? Let me scroll down a bit. Oh shit. 1,699 criticals. FML.
Yeah. And at the bottom, his conclusion is that Security Hub is dangerous and does AWS's customers a disservice, and AWS needs to provide a tool for those below the security poverty line. I can't go a single week without hearing Wendy Nather quote without hearing the security poverty line. But yeah, it's more relevant today than ever.
I could have used that line on the last conversation we were just having about the intelligent research being done at that level, right? Because there's a security poverty line of the usability of that research. right?
Yeah.
The vast majority of companies do not have the ability to use that research and execute tactics to fix those problems on their own, and let alone a mass quantity version of that where you're seeing threats coming in left and right with all sorts of different advanced techniques. How does that trickle down to the masses, right? How does that trickle below the poverty line?
Yeah. For sure. So a few few essays here. Oh, one of them is not a good link. Did he take down that
Oh no.
post? No, it's there. I see it there. Why did my link not work? What's the difference? Oh, it's missing a P.
Yep.
I'll have to go fix
Yep.
that in the show notes.
It's a Substack because Substack has P in it. Yep.
Okay. I will try to remember to go back and fix that when I finish up the news show notes. But this is from Chris Hughes. At this point, almost every week he puts out something interesting, and this one is discussing the difference between secure by design, which has been called out by CISA, which has been very contentious with the folks that I've talked to, and then secure by default, and definitely an interesting conversation to have here. And again, in the conversation with Cybernest, one of the products he's building is basically like a customer shoot. What do you call it? A customer. Help me out. The
I
group of
wish I
customers
could.
you have, advisory board. Advisory board.
Okay.
There it is.
Got it.
So it's basically like a customer advisory board vendors can come to that is separate from the Cybernest. The Cybernest is for practitioners who need advice on stuff and to share knowledge. And then the other business that they haven't launched yet is connecting buyers and their feedback with vendors. And I think this is one of those tough things where this is no vendor's top priority. To make a product secure by design or secure by default, you might as well tell them, broken by default, right? Or set up your product so that you don't have any growth. And it's just not. There's no incentive there. I don't know how to build in that incentive, but I think these campaigns, particularly the CISA one, where they're trying to get companies to sign the secure by design, it was almost exclusively cybersecurity companies, that are doing it mostly for sales visibility, and I think most of it falls on deaf ears because the incentive just isn't there. You have to be somewhat insecure if you're going to burn $3 million a month, trying to, hyper grow a startup. Introducing more friction is not going to be high on the list.
Yeah, I
Even
mean the
for the
incentive
benefit of
structures.
security.
I would argue, and I think this has always been the case. The incentive structure of cybersecurity has been broken. It's always broken when it comes to secure by design, right? Like it costs more to do it right. So what I introduced something a while back, riff. It's a riff on minimum viable product, and I called it minimum viable security. What is the
Yeah.
minimum level of security that you can put into the product that you're creating that's viable enough that the product isn't horribly insecure and won't tank your company and your product and have people run away from it? And it's a
Mm-hmm.
sad way to think of things. It's a very cynical view, but what's the minimum viable level of security that you can put in your product and still sell a product? And that's really where the bar gets set when you're designing security into products. You set it at the minimum viable level. You don't set it at the most secure level because you'll never put out a product. It's just the antithesis of execution and speed. And because of that, the whole incentive structure is broken. You're incentivized to put out the minimum level of security that can still create a product.
Yeah, like people, there's even a website for it that complain about the SSO tax. Having to pay more for a
Mm-hmm.
product to have single sign-on included. And that's one of the things Secure by Default is shouting out for. You shouldn't have to pay extra for MFA, for SSO, for stuff like that. But in a lot of cases, the vendor is paying extra for it. I remember working for a vendor, and it was including SSO with the product was eating 40% into our margins, and like per customer, like
Wow.
you're not going to pass on that cost. You're just not going to make money. Like that's, and then that's gross margins too. That 40% it was eating into gross margins.
Wow.
So yeah, like we can't do it. Like we got to find another way to do SSO, but that was, yeah, you using a third party to provide that SSO, so we wouldn't have to build it from scratch. Um, yeah, it's tough. It's a ongoing conversation that we need to have, but yeah, Tyler, I think we need maybe some frameworks or something like that, like what you're describing, that minimum viable security that you can sell, to your startup leadership and not get immediately shot down.
The hard part there is the definition of the word viable. It's trying to figure out where that line really
It's a
exists
guess.
that makes yeah, well, that's the problem, right? Is where does that line exist where it's like, hey, this is the where we maximize margin, maximize return on investment, and limit risk appropriately. This is the line. And defining and finding that line is 100% arbitrary, and that's where people miss it, right? They overshoot because they want to scale the business too fast. They overshoot on the business side and implement way too little security. Or I would argue that occasionally you see the other side, but I don't think I've ever seen a case where it's over secured. That almost never happens, right, against the viable line. But it's just viable is a gray area. But what makes a product security viable?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's going to vary per company also. It depends on what customer data you're storing, what
Yeah.
your product does, where you and me are most familiar with security products, but this is, there's a lot of other uh, startups out there, and their death rate is higher than that of security startups for the most part. So it's even less attractive to them to do something that's
Yeah.
not gonna help them sell more product.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say about this article too is he's cross comparing secure by design and secure by default, which I think are two sides, and he may make this exact point, but they're two sides of the same coin, right? Secure by design means you thought about it during the design process and implemented security as a design component. Secure by default means that you configured all those design pieces properly and maintained that configuration, right? So I think the argument may not be let's shift from secure by design to secure by default, but instead say let's keep both sides of that coin upwards and visible at all times.
Yeah. All right. The next essay here is, I'm not sure they succeed with the metaphor, with the three body problem metaphor here, but certainly we need to have a conversation. And this is mostly a conversation about shared responsibility. Shared responsibility models have been kind of under fire. And this was the very closely related to the conversation I had with Aaron Costello just before we started the news here. Because most of the vulnerabilities he finds are things where Salesforce customers are misconfiguring stuff. It's the open S3 bucket problem, basically,
Mm-hmm.
where we do have this gray area with shared responsibilities where, sure, technically it is the customer's fault. But what happens when 20% of your customers are all making the same dumb mistake and it's resulting in breaches? Clearly AWS, I don't know how high that percentage got with AWS, but they've certainly changed, how you configure things, the warnings that pop up, the defaults. They've changed a lot to make it harder to foot gun yourself with S3 buckets. So yeah, and it's tough, because every time Aaron Costello finds one of these things, and in the news, I think maybe last week or the week before, we talked about his latest one, which was ServiceNow. He's not only finding a misconfiguration that people need to be aware of. The moment he finds that, there's usually thousands of companies who have effectively just had a breach, because it usually results in data that shouldn't be public being public. And now the challenge is, and he tries to coordinate with the SaaS provider on notifying these customers and trying to get them to fix it. But yeah, like in some of these cases, it's health data. Like one of the examples, one of the thousands of companies he found misconfigured, I think with Oracle NetSuite, exposed the vaccination status and personal details of like everybody in Ireland or something like that. It was crazy, and that's just one of thousands.
Yeah, the definition of the shared responsibility model with regard to SaaS services is something else, because it's very difficult to state without knowing the specific details of the configuration of that particular SaaS service where you draw the line, right? Like some of them are going to have lines drawn in different levels of responsibility than others, just by the very nature of the services that that particular company or product provides. And so where you define that line on a per SaaS solution basis is variable. It's not, oh, well, duh, you just do X, Y, Z and 1, 2, 3 for every SaaS service and you're good to go.
Right.
There's no definition like that, right? Because Salesforce is a very different SaaS service than Excalidraw, where I draw some images, right? Like,
Yeah.
where do you
Or
draw the
Dropbox,
lines on
which
those?
we were talking about before we started
Or
recording.
Dropbox. Right. And they're all going to have, and then as they add services, those lines morph over time. Take Dropbox. When I signed up for Dropbox in like 2004 or something,
Right.
it did one thing: files. You put files there, you pull
File
files
sync.
out. Literally all you could do. Now they got streaming, they got signature services, they got real-time editing. They have so many different overlaid features that continuously, even within a single vendor, that line of SaaS shared responsibility shifts over time. And so this is a very, very difficult problem to solve.
Yeah. Yeah, and admittedly, Aaron does work for an SSPM vendor, App Omni, which is that's part of what they're trying to do here. And even for them, this is a tough problem to tackle because, if I've got 1,000 SaaS apps, like they're not going to build integrations for 1,000 SaaS apps. They're going to build it for, the 100, 150, 200 most commonly used ones, or the ones that are going to impact you the most. Typically starting with your like Google Workspace or Microsoft 365, the SaaS that has all your email, all your files, your calendar, all that stuff. So yeah, he puts together a modern SaaS shared security model, which I guess this is the three body problem part of it, where he's got be responsible is one bracket, configure, and then verify. So configure is the piece that I think results in most of the issues that people like Aaron Costello, researchers like him, are finding. But yeah, there's almost a customer success component of this. Like if you see, should the vendor be actively looking for customers making mistakes in such a way that it could come back and hurt them, but then, let's say they do that and they send out an email. Does anybody see that email? It says, make sure you're not misconfiguring this thing. Like most people are just sending that email to their spam folder anyway.
Yeah. They've already unsubscribed from that mailing list.
Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough problem. So we've got, I haven't had time to read into this, and they covered it on Paul Security Weekly, I believe, the perf control, stealthy malware targeting millions of Linux servers. So I'm just going to direct you over to that other podcast, to Paul Security Weekly, and listen to their coverage of it. And we will hit the final item here, the myth of security market consolidation. Wondering how this hits you, how this strikes you, Tyler.
Yeah, I remember I read this one in detail when it came out, and it's interesting. Oliver is a former Gartner analyst, and I'm a former Forrester analyst, and I'm going to take the opposite viewpoint. If I recall correctly, he does not believe that. He does not believe that consolidation will occur, and he lays out a number of reasons. And funny enough, when I read the article, I immediately wrote down a handful of bullets of counterpoints to write a counterpoint article, and then I've shelved it. I never actually wrote it down. But I think he
comments on the LinkedIn post.
I noticed that as well. But I think the problem with this article is that it doesn't take into account the longevity, age, and clarity of cybersecurity as a holistic thing, right? Like, just because in the past we've seen patterns of innovation and acquisition and innovation and acquisition that cause like a continuous fracturing of the market, doesn't mean that that's what the forward looking component's going to be, right? Like, I understand the natural inclination to say, hey, this is always how it happens, this is going to continue to be how it happens. But at some point, there are innovations and what I call tectonic plates that will shift underneath markets that cause markets to execute orthogonally to the way they've traditionally executed, right? And sure, innovation comes not in your big companies and they come in the newcos, they then get acquired, et cetera, et cetera. But what happens if AI is the tectonic shift that completely changes how that actually operates going forward? And innovation can begin to occur at large scale in large companies, or but I don't know. I think it's a very good article. I highly recommend reading it, but I think you should read it while simultaneously having your own unbiased or your own personal lens view of the problem statement, because I just think that it's a little bit nearsighted and using history to prove the future.
Yeah. Yeah, and so my point here is that, yeah, I think it's a more nuanced conversation. I think he's conflating a bunch of different things that go on. I think consolidation absolutely happens, but maybe doesn't happen in the way that you think. And the example I use is in the mid 2000s, if you wanted full disk encryption on your employee endpoints, if you wanted VPN clients, if you wanted a host firewall, it didn't exist yet in Windows or in Mac. Like, these were products you had to go out and buy. And a lot of them just got built into the operating system, right? BitLocker didn't exist yet. There was no Windows packet filter. There was a VPN client, but it was somewhat limited. It wasn't very user friendly. Uh, and then we got EPP, and EPP combined a lot of that stuff. There was a ton of acquisitions in the antivirus space that just kind of hoovered up anything security related that happened on the endpoint. So literally, I remember going from like 11 security agents on every endpoint. Endpoints with like a gig of RAM, 2 gigs of RAM, just
Mm-hmm.
suffering back in the day, to one agent, from one company, to, I think we used the Japanese one. My brain is on fumes at this point. But I can't think of it. But yeah, there was a ton of consolidation there. And we saw it happen again with EDR and with Next Gen AV. Literally replaced the biggest companies in the cybersecurity space, resulted in them getting delisted, bought out, taken private, broken up. And yeah, like we can look at the evidence of that, even looking back at history, without conceding that, yeah, things might move differently going forward. But a lot of what we see in the market is just recreation. I think, we see DLP, the latest stab at DLP because all the other ones sucked. The latest stab at
Yeah.
SOAR, at SIM, because all the other approaches didn't work well, or weren't very efficient, or required too many people to babysit.
Yeah, it's a super interesting question, right? Because I think by using your logic and much of the logic in the article, you can start to say things like, well, as long as we are extending our potential risk landscape or threat landscape, i.e., we're adding cloud, or we're adding kube, or we're adding cloud native, we're adding whatever, right? Any number of new technologies. There has to be new innovations that have to be new startups generally to fulfill on those security needs, right? Um, but I think at some point, will we see continued massive threat landscape expansion via innovation like that? That's the question I think that it fundamentally boils down to. Okay, we're adding AI right now. Like, what are the next two or three additional massive threat landscape shifts, tectonic plate shifts, that will be requiring a new innovation of company to fulfill on? And I just don't know that there's that much left to do there. Maybe this is where I'm being very nearsighted. maybe it is. And I admit that, like, this is definitely just a coin flip kind of thing. Like, I don't know, I could make an argument on either side of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, how could CNAP not be consolidation, right?
Well, that's my point, right? So we added all the cloud stuff, and now CNAP's picking up all the different innovators and rolling it into a CNAP style solution, right? AI, okay, well, we don't even know what AI looks like, but maybe that becomes something that pulls in 30 different versions of AI security into some kind of AI center. This gets back to my center of gravity theory. I think right now we have 4 or 5 centers of gravity in cyber that are pulling in all of these companies into them. And that's where you're seeing all these massive acquisitions come in. And it's leaving very little room for innovation because there's not a young center of gravity that has been born yet that we can innovate into, right? We're lacking that next one. And maybe that's AI. Maybe that becomes the next center of gravity that begins to swirl and grow. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
Well, and the vast majority of security startups, I think, are features, out of necessity.
That's
Like
it, exactly.
It's too hard
for sure.
To build a big thing. And, if that view of it is true, then absolutely consolidation has to happen because, like exploit prevention on the endpoint. We always knew that was just a feature waiting to be gobbled up into an EPP or an AV. We always knew the next gen AV vendors, the CrowdStrike, we're going to have to turn into EPP and compete with the big guys there. So it's I don't think the market even works without consolidation being a real functional thing.
But my question is, at one point, is the market mature enough to say that we have something so significant that we just don't need a ton more innovation in it? We don't need another 30 features. The features are so myopic and small and useless compared to the whole.
I think we passed that years ago.
Well, then that's why we need less innovation and more consolidation.
I think for a while we've been at a point where what's needed is making sure the products we actually have are working, not buying more. Making sure the processes we have are effective. Measuring the value of the products, the effectiveness of our processes. It just everything we've been buying products for so long because so many things were missing. We I think missed the the place where we should have stopped and then like made everything work together.
Yeah, it's a good question.
All right. Well, no squirrel story today. Nothing popped up throughout the week that made me say, yeah, that's a squirrel story. I've been kind of heads down, very busy on a lot of things. So sorry for the lack of a squirrel story on your final
I feel slighted. I feel slighted.
We also we don't have drinks to toast or anything like that. So maybe the true send off will be the first time we have you on as a guest. Maybe.
I am looking forward to becoming a guest on the show with as much frequency as my new employers will allow. So definitely looking forward to seeing you in the future, Adrian. I'm sure I'll bump into you at a bunch of conferences as we go forward. And let's do some fun stuff together on the side.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Tyler, for being here today and going through the news one last time with me.
Thank you, sir, for having me as always.
And a big thanks to everyone who's watching or listening to this week's episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. Next week, we'll be talking to Teresa Lanowitz from Level Blue about cyber resilience and Renuka Nadkarni from Ariaka about unified SASE as a service. See you then.